to find whatever we need?
I'll try and be on call. I do have my supper served, as you know.
Okay, no, all right. We will we'll bear that in mind.
Knife and fork, blah blah blah. I am on call, and yes, I'll try my best.
Let's see how we go.
By the way, before you start, I went to see Peter in hospital yesterday.
Oh, right.
And he was waiting to have his procedure, and they hadn't given it to him. So he's there until they do give him the procedure.
Oh, another delay.
Oh, hold on. I've got somebody coming. I have a sausage coming round to collect some money.
All right. So I think Laurie will put everybody back on mute. Oh, gone back to mute. Excellent. I can always come off, but people feel free, as people always do, to chip in. Anything got to say, and we'll be pleased to hear you. So here we go. Aleph Ahmed Base. We were talking last time, and we're carrying on the theme about the care one is to take with words. Of course, it works positively well. I wouldn't say care. One always goes for brachas to people, and always any good messages from people worth everything. So a blessing from anybody. But in particular, watch on the negative side. Beware as well, because the power of speech, as we always know, it's not just the power. Nothing worse than saying, "Oh, I wish I wouldn't have said that," because very hard to come back on that. But besides that, it's just the words generally. Have a look at Yud Aleph Ahmed Base at the top. So it's a follow-on to the previous Gemara, and you can see there's the Mishnah in sight as we go to the next Mishnah. But before that, a couple of points. Omer Rav Yehuda Omer Rav. Here we're talking about a nidui al tanai. So this is a bit like nidui is normally an excommunication, and there can be various reasons why people can be placed in a nidui, excommunicated. Often it could be the bezdin themselves, where the person's not behaving as he should do. It could be regarding a get, or they can put people in excommunicated. In fact, there's a Rambam talks about the various instances where I can do that. But you can place yourself into a nidui, excommunicate yourself. And here we're talking about, watch out for that nidui al tanai, even if there's a condition attached. And hopefully we'll look at the Tosfos in a moment. So be careful about a nidui al tanai. That means a conditional excommunication. What does that mean? If a person says, if, as you say, I don't do something, then I should be excommunicated. And look at the words here, nidui al tanai. And in fact, some people I can see around the side, the Mashor in particular, adds the words afilu me'atzma. I don't know if you've got that around the side. I've got from the Mashor, adds the words, even if the person themselves said this on a condition. Even though that condition may be fulfilled, in some way that person will be, say, excommunicated. We'll see what that, how this flows through. So if that's the case, sorry hafora, it still needs to be annulled. A person may say, well, I fulfilled the condition, or depends what that only if this, then I will be excommunicated, not part of the community. That still needs a hafora, which means an annulment, either by the person who's placed it, it could be the bezdin, or it could be a higher authority. We'll see about that as we go. Minola, where do we learn this principle from? Mark, good to see you. Hello there, Mark. I think you're, yeah, that's fine. We can, with us. We're doing Yud Aleph Ahmed Base, and that comes from Yehuda. Why? What was the story here about Yehuda? Dichsiv im lo havi oisim eilecha. Pasuk. If I don't bring him back, Actually, if I can call upon you, Laurie, we're talking about Bereshis. Whoa, that was very quick. Now I can tell you where to look. This, if you remember,
I'm cheating with art scrolls.
So that's fine. Well done. Yeah. So if you remember, by Yomi, when they would remember they'd been down to Egypt. That's the time of the famine, and Yosef has said, "They only come back if Binyamin, my brother, is with you." And of course, they didn't know it was Yosef at that time, and Yaakov not very happy to allow Yosef to go. He's seen what's happened, or even Yosef, he doesn't know anything about the whereabouts of Yosef, so he's not very happy to do that. Now, look at, so Yehuda comes forward, and V'nichya Bayom Yehuda Yisrael Oviv, to Yaakov Yisrael, send the lad with me, and V'nokuma, let us rise and go there, and then when the Nichya Nomas will get, we've run out of food. Then we will live. Everybody, our children, we don't have any food. Now, this is the crucial point. Onochi Posuk 9, Ervenu. I will act as an orev, like it's translated here, a surety, yeah. An orev, a guarantor is probably a good word. Miyodi tavakshenu. You can hold me, you can seek it out from me if this doesn't work. Imlo havi oisim eilecha. If I don't bring him back, and v'hiktagtivlo means to stand him before you, meaning alive, rather than not. Then look, I'm telling you, but he says v'chotosi lecha kol hayomim. I will be forever guilty. Now, what's this kol hayomim? Now, you might have the words kol hayomim there. Let's have a look, a very quick double click on kol hayomim. Let's see if we get a Rashi. Let's have a look at Rashi quickly. Kol hayomim. Yeah, kol hayomim, all the days, the world to come as well. I will always be guilty if I don't bring him back. Never to be forgiven. I'm going to cut myself off, as it were, because chotosi lecho kol hayomim. Okay, that's also, thank you. La'olam haba as well. That's kol hayomim, all the days. Kol hayomim means entirely. We're talking about not just here, but in the la'olam haba. Now, what did happen? We do know that in the end, it all worked out well. And of course, he was brought back. He was alive. And of course, so in fact, was Yosef. Now, follow on the piece here. Let's have a look here. Tosfos, before we go any further, let's have a quick look at the Tosfos. If you've got the Tosfos on the page. Yesh medaknikim mikan. Some people say from here, Duniduyim shalonu, all our excommunications, which are imposed by a Bezdin, let's say, Afila osam sheish lem zman, there may be a time period, if you don't pay up, whatever it is, then you will be excommunicated. Ein lenadus atzmon misofik. You shouldn't do this. Don't do that with a possibility, maybe or maybe not, the person will fulfill whatever conditions are attached to that. As I say, it may be a get, it may be the person's not paying up debts that he should do, and they've therefore put him in this situation. And now, if you look at Agos Abach, Abba Chazal says this V'lav Milsa, don't learn from here that you can't normally have this process of excommunication with a condition. If you don't do such an action by a certain date, you will be excommunicated. From here, it sounds quite severe. Tzorech hafara needs some type of an annulment, and don't do it. So the Tosfos says, Shari hocha hisna b'dova shloho b'yoda lekayim. You see, here he was making a condition which was outside really his control. So normally you can make a condition and say, well, you've got to raise the money, you've got the get or whatever it is. But here it's outside his control. The Shema Yosef. And also maybe something can happen on the way. Yosef would not allow him back. It's not in his control. And that's why it's more severe. Something which is outside someone's control has an immediate effect. The whole thing applies immediately because it's out of his control. If a person's excommunicated, he shouldn't do this action or he should do something else, which is totally within his capability of doing, then that conditional nidui is perfectly in order. In other words, we're saying, yes, that condition means that if you fulfill the condition, it won't apply. So what we're saying is this is a very specific case. If a person makes this condition something which is out of his control, then we're saying whatever happens, this nidui will always come into effect, whether or not you fulfilled it, because it was out of your control to start with. Let's see what happened here. So far, Yehuda has said that if I don't bring him back and it's out of my control, I will have sinned here and in the world to come. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. Let's go back. Thank you very much. Putting that back on. Now let's have a look back to the Gemara, please. Now, says the Gemara, V'omer Rab Shmuel bar Nachmani, Omer Rab Yonasan. My dichsiv, right at the end in the Zos HaBrocha, where brachas are given out with Moshe Rabbeinu prior to him passing away, and he gives a bracha, Yechi Ruvain Ba'al Yonos. Ruvain, you live and continue with your wonderful work. And then it goes on to V'zos Yehuda. Now, Reuven, the order normally is Reuven, Shimon, Levi. Yehuda comes in number 4, and the brachas go straight into Yehuda, who receives the next person to be blessed, and it means the tribe of Yehuda. Clearly, the tribe of Yehuda is being blessed, and there's this word "bezois," and this. There's some type of link between Reuven and Yehuda. What is going on here? Says, as we'll see, Kol Oisun Mem Shana, all those 40 years, Shahoya Yisrael Bamidbar, Yisrael were in the Midbar, Atzmoisov Shel Yehuda Hoyu Mugu Golim. Oh, wow. The bones, they're taken up with them, as Rashi tells us. The bones were like rattling, Megulgolim. So it wasn't, although they were taking up all the Shvatim to Eretz Yisrael to bury them, and the rest of them were fine. The bones were all connected, as you'd expect, rather than Mugulgolim separated. Ba'oron, in the coffin. Ad she'omad Moshe. So we see something's happened to Yehuda. And this has happened to Yehuda because he made this statement that he will always be guilty. And it was out of his control. Don't do that. It hasn't been annulled yet. Now, look at this. Ad she'omad Moshe, Ubikesh olov rachamim. Now, this is the crucial point. Moshe is coming and asking forgiveness, rachamim, mercy from Hashem. And he says the following, two further stories. Omar lefonov ribono shel olam, mi goram lireuven sheyoda. Reuven, and we'll have a look at the psukim in a moment. It was Yehuda who, under his, if you like, advice, wasn't even advice of the actions of Yehuda, that Reuven admitted guilt. What are we talking about? We'll see in a second. Let's just see how this goes. So, mi goran Reuven sheyoda, he admitted guilt. Yehuda, who also admitted guilt for his action, not this Tanai that we're talking about. There's some other action that Yehuda did. And that's what this means. V'zois li Yehuda. This about Yehuda, Shema Hashem kol Yehuda. Listen to the voice of Yehuda and forgive him, because it was only because of Yehuda admitting guilt of one of the actions he did, we'll see that in a moment, that Reuven admitted guilt, and therefore he needs to be forgiven for this Tanai that he made at the beginning, where he said he will never be free of guilt from the condition he made. So there are a couple of things going on here. There's the initial point that we started with, where Yehuda says that if I don't bring back Binyamin, I will forever be guilty. Right? There are two other actions prior to this. There's Reuven and Yehuda. What are we talking about here? Now, have a look at the Rashi, the second Rashi. V'zois li Yehuda, ma ro lismoich Yehuda li Reuven. Why is Yehuda right next to Reuven when it comes to the brachas that Moshe Rabbeinu is giving at the end of his life? Which means skeleton, etc. It was at least complete. It was like shaking, disconnected in some way. It was not keeping calm, as you'd expect inside a coffin. Oma loshen ze yechi Reuven koloma Reuven, that's alive. And well, when I say alive, his bones are formed and ready, being taken to Eretz Yisrael. Ki'ilu hu chai. It's true, of course, he's not alive, but you've got the body of Reuven is intact. Now, Reuven, v'zois tihye li Yehuda. The same thing should be to Yehuda. Shehemu golim. It was like moving. It wasn't intact. The body was not intact. Says Rashi, Atzmos kol hashvatim yotzu miMitzrayim. All the Shvatim, going back, Reuven, Shimon, all of them, they all left Mitzrayim. They passed away, but they were all brought out of Mitzrayim. V'nosum b'neihem b'midbar. Their children, future generations going down, carried the coffins of all the Shvatim. V'zeu she'omar le'echad. This is what Yosef said to his brothers. V'halisem atzmoisai mizeh itchem. Yosef says to his brothers that when he dies, I want you to take up my bones when you eventually leave Mitzrayim, mizeh itchem, with you, im atzmoisechem. Now, what's the story that we're talking about here when we talk about Yehuda and we talk about Reuven? So again, his body is not completely intact. And the reason is because he made this condition that he should really, it seems like some type of punishment for making this conditional excommunication. He's not like living, he's not parts, he has his body is not in one piece, because he made this condition, and he said he should be excommunicated and not like a whole individual. Now, going back, Moshe says, but there's one great thing that Yehuda did, and he deserves to be forgiven for everything he's done, because he admitted guilt about something, and because of that, Reuven also admitted. What are we talking about here? Now, when it says here, all it says here, mi goram Reuven sheyoda, but it doesn't tell you exactly what we're talking about here. Now, the story is the following. If you remember with Yehuda had 3 sons. 2 of them died childless. The third one, he didn't want to give. Remember, it was Tamar. And even in those days, there's the idea of Yibum continuing on. And the father, which was Yehuda, said, I'm not going to give my third son because 2 of them already passed away. And therefore, I'm going to hold back from giving my third son to Tamar. Tamar felt that she wants very much to perform this mitzvah of Yibum. And this, of course, is before Matan Torah. Yibum was done a close relation. Of course, now a Yibum is always the brother. It doesn't have to be the brother in those days. And therefore, she dressed up, made out she was a harlot, and so that she could have relations with Yehuda himself. And if you remember the story, Yehuda gives his signet ring. Tosfos says there that signet ring was, although she was, I say, a harlot, he was actually marrying her. They had relations. But he never found out exactly who this lady was. She'd covered herself in kissasoch ponel. He didn't know exactly who this individual was. Subsequently, when she became pregnant from Yehuda, then people come and say, your daughter-in-law has become pregnant. She's not remarried. And as Rashi explains there, she was a descendant of Shem. Shem, not at the time of Noach, but a descendant. And therefore, acting in this way, she was Chayav Misa. Those were the rules. So what happened? She didn't want to embarrass Yehuda, but she comes forward with a trial. Yes, she's deserving death in those days. Someone unmarried, particularly coming as a descendant from Shem, would be Chayav Misa if it's out of wedlock. But she doesn't want to admit that, in fact, the father is Yehuda himself. So she then produces the signet ring. She said, whoever is the owner of this signet ring, which he'd given to her, he is the father. Which means Yehuda at that point realizes, yes, it is he is the father. And he admits, I am at fault. I am the father. I was about to put her to death as being in charge of the Bezdin. So he was hoider that he'd taken this harlot, although married her with his signet ring, but nevertheless he admitted, although Yehuda, in this great level of Yehuda, he was prepared to admit that yes, he was the father, even though of course shame on him in many ways, but nevertheless he admitted guilt. Now, there was another event that happened with Reuven. Right? So let's remember that Yehuda admitted guilt, even though it could be highly embarrassing. He admitted, I am the father. Now, with the story of, let's go to the story now of Reuven. What's the story of Reuven? I don't know if we can turn to Bereshis Lamate, that's 35:22. Very interesting story with Reuven. Bereshis 35:22, which is coming up. Let's see, one needs to know this by just seeing this Gemara. Let's have a look if we can have that. Bereshis, excellent. Now, let's go a little bit higher, sorry. 22, 21. All right, here we are. This is after the death of Rachel. And it mentions here, interesting word, and he lay es bilha pilegesh obiv. Do you remember? There was Rachel, who had just passed away, and Bilhah was the concubine, also one of the mothers of the Shvatim. By Yishkav es Bilhah pilegesh obiv, and Yisrael heard about this. But look at the next posuk. By Yiyu v'nei Yaakov sheneim osor. They were still 12 in number. You think totally unnecessary posuk to tell us. We know how many tribes there were. We know how many sons of Yaakov there were. This posuk seems totally out of place. Explain the Meforshim, Vayu b'nei Yaakov shneim osor, telling us that he was not. Don't take this word literally, this Vayishkav. If you can double click on that, let's have a look what Rashi says about that. Rashi, let's go to Rashi. We can go to the Hebrew if you like first. We'll go to the English in a moment. Right, Vayishkav. And that's the final part of the, when it says Vayibnei Yaakov Shnei Mosa, tells us that don't take this literally, they actually lay with Bilhah. Mitoich shebilbel mishkovai. He mixed up. What's he mean? He mixed up? Mixed up the main home of Yaakov. Now, as we know, Rachel was considered, even though there were 4 wives, or 2 wives, 2 concubines, the main wife of Yaakov was Rachel, Yosef, Benjamin, Rachel. When she died, he moved the main home of Yaakov. Bilbel Mishkove, the place, the main place where he would have relations, was moved now. It's as if he himself lay with Bilhah, but it doesn't mean that. Veloma Bilbel. Why did he do this? What do you mean he was getting involved in? What's he got to do with him? Look at this. We'll look at the English in a moment. Shekashemesa Rachel, Notal Yaakov Mitosa, his main home, main bed. Although it was in the tent of Rachel, below Bishar Oiholim, and not in the other tents. That wasn't his main home. And Yaakov decided he's now moving that to the concubine of Rachel, which was Bilhah. That's what Yaakov did. Bor Reuven, of course, the son of Leah, V'tova el benimai. He felt very bad for his mother. After all, she was, if you like, there was Rachel, Leah, and then the two concubines. Now we're moving to the concubine of Rachel and overlooking his mother. Oma im achois imi hoisotzoro leimi. The sister of my mother she was considered like a two sisters battling one against the other, and Rochel was the winner. So therefore he moved the main home of Yaakov from Yaakov had decided it was going to be Bilhah, and he moved that to Leah. Have a look at the translation on that, just to help us along. Gemara in Shabbos. Because he had disturbed his couch, that's what it means. Scripture accounts it to him as though he's actually sinned in this manner, laying with Bilhah. But why did he disturb the couch? Which means he was getting involved in things which are not to do with him. This was a private, certainly a private matter of Yaakov. When Rachel died, Yaakov removed to Bilhah's tent. That was his main home. And Reuven came and protested against the slight inflicted on his mother Leah. He said, if my mother's sister was a rival, is that any reason the handmaid of my mother's sister should become a rival? On this account, he did this act. Now, when we get there, we thank you very much, Roy. Let's go back to where we're up to here. So, we've got this event of Reuven. Subsequently, he felt it was totally wrong. He shouldn't get involved. It's true. He was doing that on behalf of not that his mother had sent him to do this, but he felt the slight against his mother. But it was really, as you'd say, nothing to do with him. And he felt he must admit guilt doing that. It sounds like nobody's quite clear who done it, or at least publicly admit that what he'd done was wrong. And this idea of publicly admitting guilt, when a person is guilty, he learned this from Yehuda. As we've just seen before, Yehuda admitted that he was the father, didn't have to admit that in his position, but he admitted because, as we said, Tamar was not prepared to reveal who the father was, although she knew, didn't want to upset him or embarrass him. Amazing. To save the embarrassment of Yehuda, she said, I'm not going to reveal who the father is unless he reveals it himself. So you just said, well, the owner of this signet ring is the father, and he admitted. He didn't have to admit it. I'm sure he could have, in his position, he could have allowed some type of reason why she shouldn't be killed, realizing that he was the father. But no, he admitted he was the father. When Reuven saw that, Reuven said, wow, he admitted publicly, I am now going to admit publicly that I was wrong for doing this. Chotosi. And that's a lesson he learned from Yehuda. Now, going back to our Gemara, slightly involved. So now Moshe Rabbeinu said, for that great action of his, the bones, we said, of Yehuda were not lying comfortably as they're moving the coffins from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael through the Midbar. Moshe says, but what this great zechus that he did, it was only because of him admitting guilt that Reuven admitted guilt. Therefore, it's about time that Yehuda had a more comfortable death. In other words, let the body lie intact. And it didn't lie intact because he said he was going to be under this nidui, excommunicated. This was like the excommunication of Yehuda. So Moshe is asking and requesting rachamim. Let's go back to the Gemara. He needs now to be outside the effect of this excommunication he put himself in, even though it was on condition. And even though the condition was fulfilled, nevertheless, it needed Moshe Rabbeinu to come forward and realize that why the bones are magalgalin, are not comfortable within the coffin is because of this excommunication which he put himself in. So he's saying, what has Chusis got? Mi goram Reuven sheyud. Why did Reuven admit guilt for what he'd done, interfering with the personal things of his father? It was all because of Yehuda. Yehuda admitted that he was guilty. Therefore, the Zoisli Yehuda, the same thing should be to Yehuda, just like Reuven is lying comfortably in the coffin. The same thing should happen to Yehuda. And then with the pasuk continues, Shema Hashem Kol Yehuda. Hear his voice. What does it mean to hear his voice? Hear all about him. All Avrei L'Shofar, says Rashi. The bones then were lying comfortably. L'mokom chiburam, how they were originally connected. There was no megalgalin. In other words, it looks like this excommunication which he had placed himself in was now being annulled. But that's only here. Remember, we said before, he said he's going to be excommunicated in some way, not part of the group here. He's not the same. Well, okay, we can see the bones are now lying in state, and not in state is the wrong word, lying comfortably in the coffin. But continues the Gemara, Lo have koma ayelele lemasifta de rakia. Can I ask you, please, let's have a look at that posuk. It's Devarim Lamed Gimel 33:6. Devarim Lamed Gimel. Thank you. 33. Right, 33, 6 and 7. Well, let's go to A. Let's go for both. We can go for both. Sort through a translation. That's nice. Going through all. There's Yechi Reuven. And it goes immediately, the next posuk is V'zosli Yehuda. What happened to the other Shvatim? So we explained, Yechi, just like Reuven, is, yes, Yechi in some way, he's within the coffin, and the bones are comfortably within the coffin. The same thing should happen to Yehuda. Now, our Gemara, at the same time, we'll keep that posuk, and let's have a look at the Gemara, where the Gemara here says, Lo havi koma ailele lemesifta derakia. Woo. Lo have, what does it mean, lo haven? Lo hava ma'ailele, they wouldn't allow him entry, lemesifta derakia. Wow. Into the heavenly, I suppose you'd say, Masifta. You say like the in Olam or MS, things we don't quite really understand, but in Olam or MS, he was not allowed entry. Why? Because he'd excommunicated himself. So that what's next? The pasuk says, "The El Amoy Tivienu, bring him to his people." Even in Olam or MS, says the Gemara, Lo have koyoda lemishkal umitrach bishmaita bahadi rabbonon. He wasn't capable of, I suppose you say, lemishkal umitrach, busying himself, arguing in Shemaim with the other people. In other words, he seems to be, again, he was distanced from the other people. Interesting that Moshe Rabbeinu, with that, is now saying, Yodov Rov Loi. May his hands, I'm going back to the posuk here again, Yodov Rov Loi. May his hands, he's got translated, strive for him, argue for him, his hands, Rov Loi, they should be strong, that he should be capable of discussing things in Olam or Emes. Lo hava yoda lifruka kashya. He wasn't that capable of answering up questions in Shomayim, which were placed to him. And the last part of the pasuk says, "Va'edzer mitzarav tihye." You should be a help against those who are arguing, contending with him, and that's the end of this pasuk. Now, can we go, please, Laurie, to the, I think we have to go to the Gemara. If you go to Gemara Makkos Yud Aleph Omid base, scroll down a bit further. Makot, there you go. Yud Aleph Omid base, so that's 11b. Excellent. Right, scroll down a bit. Now, if you double click on that Kol Osen, let's have a look at the commentary there. No, actually, it's the next one I want. Scroll down one more. Yes. Now go to commentary. There should be the Chochma Chidushe. I got, that's what we want. Before you click it, go back again. Let's just have a look who we're talking about here. This is, you'll have to scroll up because otherwise I think some people may have you. Oh, there you are. Very good. 70, that famous Chidushe Agodas is the same as that goes with the one below it. It's called the Marshal. Reb Shlomo Idel. There you go. 17th century commentary, the same as one above. Analyzing Agadic Talmudic passage, brings it together with the Chidushe Halachos, the next one on the list here, in the back of the Vilna Talmud. The 70th work by there we are, Rashi and Tosfos, as well as the Now, here, let's double click on that 17th century. Now, I'm not sure you get a translation of this. Maybe you will. Oh, no, you don't. No, they haven't translated this for us. Okay, but let's see what we do. This is very interesting. Obviously, a Kabbalah, when I say Kabbalah, it means tradition. This is what we're talking about here. So what's the final comment here out of all of this? Let me just summarize where we're up to. He made a conditional excommunication. If I don't bring Binyamin back, it was out of his power to do so, which means the excommunication is applicable until Moshe came and annulled it, not only in this world, because he said those words kol hayomim, even in the next world that he can, this is a tricky piece, converse, it seems, with the other neshamas in Olam Haba. Now look what he says, Chidushe Agoros. Uma shekosav lo hava kol ma'ayele l'sifte d'rakia. He wasn't allowed entry into the heavenly Olam Haba. Lo hava yoda l'mishkel. He wasn't capable of joining in with the others there in their discussions. Now this is the point. De kamo de marachkim ba'olam hazeh min hamanuda. Normally, someone who's excommunicated until that's annulled, and of course, as we said in Tosfos, that if it was a condition which he himself could do, for example, as I said before, paying up a debt which he is capable of but refused to pay, even though the Beis Din told him he must do, or maybe a difficulty with a get, and they excommunicating individuals, and that does happen throughout the ages. We've had that. Then, once he's paid, then fine. But until such time, then let's go back to this Chidushe Agoros third line. Merachkin ba'olam hazeh min hamanuda. He's distanced from this person who's been excommunicated. Mi'achil v'shsia. He cannot eat. Other people will know that we have notices up that you really shouldn't be inviting this individual until he's done whatever he's been asked to do.
But Norman, a very brief question which occurred to me earlier. That
yes.
At the time, Patz was convinced that it was within his control. In retrospect,
that's what we saw in Tosfos. In Tosfos, we saw he was making this condition, but he knew it's not totally in his control. If Yosef was going to not allow him, he wouldn't be allowed to do it.
But he was reliant on his negotiation skills, right?
Well, fine, but he may not win. You see, that's very different to someone who refuses to make a certain payment and the Bezdin said, you've got to make this payment, and he still refuses. He's got the money, but refuses to pay.
Yeah,
and they
okay.
say, so then we say, look, you cough up. Now, he knew that there was a possibility that something might happen on the way. You're right, his wonderful skills, oratory skills, maybe they wouldn't pay off. Maybe it might not work. So therefore, what we're saying under those circumstances, that's why this excommunication stands until Moshe Rabbeinu removed it. Now, what the Maharshal is concerned about, what's this got to do with what? What's he mean, Olam Emes here? With these discussions. Now, look at the fourth line down. It's just like in this world, if someone's excommunicated, then individuals should not be inviting them to their b'mitzvahs or chashulas or until he's paid up, until he's done whatever's been asked. Carry on. Achilus, see a fourth line down. Ubakama shadavarim. Other things too. You wouldn't be allowed really to communicate. Yeah, I mean, even in shuls, it does happen that people then have been barred from aliyahs and kain marchikin ba'olam haba min hamenuda. Someone who's excommunicated and the excommunication has not been removed is going to be barred. Ba'ele hadvorim shein ba'olam haba. Those things which are in the heavenly area. Tachas achila ushia. Now there's no food and drink. Sheba olam hazeh kamo shekosav olam haba emo la achila ushia. As we know, obviously no achila ushia ela tzadikim yoshvim. There are tzadikim, and those of that caliber are available. Wow, amazing that the neshamas can be talking to each other, and that's what we're saying here. Those of that caliber would be able to communicate to others unless they're barred, and that's what we're saying here. That Moshe Rabbeinu was removing that bar, if you like, enabling Yehuda to be together with the others in Olam Haba. Okay, thank you very much, Laurie. And that was just a concluding piece. Sorry, it's a bit involved. Just another, hopefully far away from excommunication, but the idea again of watch out for your mouth. Watch out positively, negatively. What a person says, one needs to be very careful. I see we're not that far away from Purim, so I will tell you something. I know it's been. I remember, Lorena, when I was sitting shiva. I was sitting shiva for my mother, and that was middle of the summer. It was Av time, and I'm just saying the power of the mouth. And some wise guy came in, and I'm sitting shiva. So he says to me, as I say, it's middle August time. So that means the yard site is going to be in August time. He says to me, bang goes your holidays in summertime now, Norman. Yeah, you're right. And I thought, but I must say, I kept my mouth tight. I thought to myself, bang goes your mitzvah of comforting the Avelim. It's funny, but it just shows, people don't know quite what to say, so they're in a situation they feel they've got to say something. It's better to say nothing than saying something. No doubt when he left, he may well have thought to himself, perhaps that wasn't the right thing to say. But beware of speech. The effect it can have. Yeah, it's true. I just laughed it off. And afterwards, although I was thinking at the time, it hadn't occurred to me that you're right. I'll always have your side middle of August, it is say holiday time, and always looking for minyanim and everything else. But we won't go down there. But the point we're saying seeing here is beware what a person says. Negatively, we've seen in the previous Talmud when it comes to saying something negative, cursing, saying something negative to someone. But again, if that's the negative side, the positive side, of course, in the balance, always worthwhile saying a bracha. Birkas Hedget, it's called. Even the bracha of a Hedget, certainly if they're of a greater pious individual, that's something else. But even the bracha of a Hedget don't be taken lightly. Interesting. There are lots of occasions, particularly here, they're very, very keen. If there's a bris and you've got the Sundik, everybody queues up, particularly among the Sfardim here. They queue up for the Sundik. They've got to get a bracha from the Sundik. Now, the Sundik could be anybody, might not necessarily be, the God Lador, if you see what I mean, but he's a Sundik. And, he's got the power of giving brachas, and the same with anybody. A Birkas Hedget, always worthwhile, and that's really what we're seeing from here. Let's move on to Gemara, please, gentlemen, as we move back to our Gemara. Now, right back into it. If you remember on the previous Amud, I'll just remind people that there were various categories of a Kohen Gadol. We've spoken about someone remaining in Ori Miklot until the Kohen Gadol passes away. And the Mishnah gave us various examples. You can have a Kohen Gadol. You can have a Kohen Gadol who was a Kohen Gadol and no longer a Kohen Gadol. And what does that mean? Maybe the original Kohen Gadol was ill for whatever. Tomei couldn't continue his work, so they put the deputy in. When the original Kohen is then has recovered or Toha, then the deputy would then stand down, but he still maintains and keeps the title of Kohen Gadol. And we learn from various psukim that individual will also allow, if he dies, that now the person in Golus can leave Gotmoch, can leave Golus. And there was another one. Remember, Rabbi Yehuda said, even the Meshuach Milchama, he's also called a Kohen. When there was a machlokas about that, we saw the psukim. Someone is the Kohen who is giving the speech, is called the Kohen, giving the speech to the troops before they're going out into battle. Atem Korevim Hayom, you're doing this, it's a Kiddush Hashem, etc., building up their spirits. He's also called a Kohen, and therefore, according to Rabbi Yossi, he also allows, on his death, the Retzeach who'd killed accidentally in Golus would be free. Says the Gemara, that's where we pick it up here in our Gemara, gentlemen. Beginning of line is Ezer, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines above the Mishnah. Iboilahu, they asked them, which means one group, a yeshiva, one group of people asked another group. We had all these, this was learned from Psukim, all these different levels of a Kohen Gadol. Does it mean that he's got to wait for all of them to die? Again, Iboilu b'misas kulon hu chayzer, o dilma b'misas echot mehen, or is it just one of them? Good question. Says the Gemara Toshema. The next Mishnah will tell us 2 lines further on, Nigma Dinai below Kohen Gadol. It's not the first case. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down in the Mishnah. What happens if this person, remember, he'd killed accidentally, the verdict is given, and there's no Kohen Gadol actually been appointed yet. There was one, he passed away, they haven't appointed the next one yet. What happens then? But look at that, Nigma Dina below Kohen Gadol. Doesn't that seem to show? Look back to our Gemara. Toshma, we're now trying to prove the point. Do you need all these Kohanim Gedolim to pass away, or just one of them? There it said, Nigma Dina below Kohen Gadol. In fact, he never leaves Ori Miklot. That's not for now, that's for the next Mishnah. But the point we're making is, ask the Gemara, Vim Isa, well, What's wrong with another one? If it's any one of, why can't he wait for the next? What do I mean by the next? If there's, for example, there's somebody who's the deputy, you've got the Kohen Gadol himself, the deputy, let's say you've got the Kohen Mashuach Milchama. So if one of them dies, you presume you've got another two. So why does such an individual have to say in Ori Miklot forever? It sounds like it sounds like it's got, so again, if it was just one of them is not available and you've got two others, why does he have to stay there forever? V'im Isa lahada bahanach. Why can't he leave Ori Miklot with the death of the other one? What do you see from there? It sounds like you've got to have all three, and he hasn't got all three because one of them's not there. You with me? Because if it was just any one of, so okay, one of them's not there, but what about the other two? Aren't they still there? Says the Gemara, that's not 100% proof, because you could say the Mishnah was talking about B'deleka, where there was no other Kohen Gadol as well. The others also weren't there. Are you with me? So when the Mishnah says if there's no Kohen Gadol, it means none of those different types of Kohanim Gedolim are there. That's what it means. Not only just one of them is not there. Are you with me? Again, we're trying to prove, do you need the death of all these different individuals with the title Kohen Gadol? A deputy, a Kohen Mashuach Milchama, for battles, the Kohen Gadol himself. Do you need any one of those? Or do you need all three? So the Gemara's conclusion is we haven't got a proof, because the next Mishnah, which says if the Kohen Gadol's not there, if there's no Kohen Gadol, it maybe all three of them aren't there. You with me?
Isn't it a bit unlikely that all three would be gone?
Absolutely. That's where the Gemara is coming from. You're absolutely right. And the Gemara says that your point, V'im Isa, if it just one, let go for the others. It's pretty unlikely. Exactly what you're saying is the Gemara's question. Says the Gemara in an answer, you are quite right, but it's not watertight, your proof. You could just say that what the Mishnah is referring to is when all three of them are not here. Now, you're quite right, Sam. Pretty unlikely. But as we know, a proof has got to be 100% watertight. The proof, therefore, from the next Mishnah is not 100% watertight proof, because as rare as it might be, surprising as it might just be that there are no Kohen Gedolim there. But maybe you do need all three. So the Gemara has not solved the problem. If I can call upon you, please, for the last time tonight, Laurie, let's go to the Rambam and see how we paskin. And this will have to go to let's go to, we'll walk you through this. Let's go to Halacha. So let's go to Safaria and let's see how the Rambam paskins. Well done. Let's go to Halacha. Third one down on the left. Let's go to Mishnah Torah, Rambam. Let's go scroll down until we get to Hilchos Rotzeach, the halachas of. No, it's quite a long way down. Amazing, the huge amount of the Rambam. Keep going. Kedusha, flaws, a bit more. Avodah, the temple. No, it's after that. Korbanot after that. Tara after that. Here we go. Of life. And if you go to chapter 7 in that, Halacha Tes 7, scroll down to Halacha Tes. That's on the side of the Gemara here. Here we are. Now, one more. Tes. One more. Here we are. One more. Tes. One more. Number 9. There we are. Right. That's it. Echad Kohen Gadol HaMashuach B'Shem HaMishra, whether this Kohen Gadol had been anointed with oil. And as we said before, there are later categories where they didn't have the oil. All he might have is Echad HaMeruba B'Begodim. He might just be a Kohen Gadol because he's got the extra clothes. Remember the Shmona Begodim, as we talk about, the eight clothes, the eight items of clothes that he's wearing. The Echad Kohen Gadol there, whether his has passed the Echad HaKohen She'ova. Sorry, I've read it wrong. Ve'echod HaKohen HaGadol HaOved, who's actually doing the work. Ve'echod HaKohen She'ova, whether he might have been a deputy, he's now passed back the role to the original. But notice we're not going to paskin now like Rabbi Yehuda says Meshuach Melchama. That's not that. Oh no, they'll come to that in a second. Kol echod me arbaton shemeis machse eseretzeach. So you'll be pleased to hear, Sam, that really that when we're talking about it's any one of those. So therefore, the next Mishnah we can take it in the simple way that any one of them will release this individual who's killed accidentally. We did say in that previous Mishnah, don't click off yet. Remember the view about Rabbi Yehuda who says the Meshuach Milchama is also one of those Kohanim who on his death, the Ritzach can leave or a Miklot. That was only the view of Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah. The Tanna Kamma disagreed. So the Rambam, to conclude, says, but Avol Meshuach Milchama Einoi Machseh Mipnei Shehu Kohen Hedget. He is not. That was the argument between the Tanna Kamma and Rabbi Yehuda. So the Rambam paskin like the Tanna Kamma, he is not considered a Kohen Gadol, or maybe called HaKohen, but he's still not a Kohen Gadol, and therefore he's not one of them. But we have solved. Well, we haven't solved it, but we've got the sack at least from the Rambam that in fact it is any one of those. And I think you're right, Sam. It's from that next Mishnah. You pretty much expect it to be, it's true, it wasn't a watertight proof, but a pretty good proof, enough that that's the way we will be paskening. So with that, Laurie, thank you very much indeed. As we got to the next Mishnah, so well done, Malcolm. A wave from Malcolm there. Oh, does a wave mean you're saying goodbye, or you want to ask?
I just wanted to mention, I slightly, there's a comment in my copy on that, and it says, can I just read it?
Please. What are you reading?
The Steinsaltz.
Oh, right, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, it says, the commentaries on the Rambam, which we just looked at, presumably,
yes, question
the source of his ruling, as the dilemma remains unresolved in the Gemara, which is what you just said.
That's your point, Sam, that we were talking about.
And then it says the Mishnah Lamelech suggests that since this is a matter of life and death, as if the ruling is that the murderer can leave only after the death of all the high priests, and he left after the death of one, the blood redeemer can kill him.
Right.
The ruling is lenient.
Right.
So what they're sort of saying, it was implying that Rambam is ruling, his ruling is lenient.
Well, it is.
Because
if you had to have all four, and therefore if he left by mistake or anything, then of course, as the Goel Adon, we haven't really been into this, but the Goel Adon would still be allowed to kill him. So it's almost like if you've got a pasuk one way or the other, it's better to be lenient
on this thing.
Yeah. Good, very good. Thank you very much for that. That's the Magid Mishnah on that point. Thank you. So we are paskening in the lenient way. So it's not so much that the next Mishnah is a proof, because we said it's not a watertight, but it's it's not 100% proof. It would seem that way, as Sam was mentioning. Seems that's what Pshat is, but we can't be certain. But what you're saying, Malcolm, on the Magid Mishnah round, which is one of the commentaries on the Rambam, on the one that we've just seen, is saying because he's being lenient, which would mean, therefore, that he is free to go. And now, I suppose everybody would know that the Kohen Gadol has died, and therefore free to go and cannot be killed by the Goel Adon. Yeah, it's a good one.